Welcome everybody to another edition of Let's Talk Music Richmond. My name's Bill McGee and I'm a halfway decent trumpet player. And the guy over here on the side who is my cohort in crime is an awesome musician and technology person. And I'm going to throw the ball to him and let him introduce our guest tonight. I'm throwing the ball to Charles Manns, who is my mentor, and he's teaching me everything I know about everything. So I'm gonna show it over to Charles Manns, and you introduce this other guy, Charles.
You know, that's something like an introduction of an older person. I think you're trying to establish their age ranking right now.
Absolutely.
But
Marshall's gonna tell you that he outranks you, which is very rare on here.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is an absolute pleasure to have with us this evening one of the premier performers from the early 70s, the time period that we're talking about, 1960s, 1970s, and 1980, all that live music that was going on in Richmond, Virginia. Right. This guy and his band, I used to run into them all the time. And boy, we had to be on that P's and Q's whenever Marshall showed up with the group, because they would funk it up. Oh, yeah, Marshall Smith, it's a pleasure to have you. I'm glad you joined us today.
What was the name of his group, Charles?
The name of his group was Poison.
Poison.
The Poison. And let me tell you, they were seriously a good, hot funk group that covered the Richmond area and came out of the Richmond area in the 70s. And let me get Marshall to give you a little background history on this stuff. Marshall, tell us all about the group. How big was the group? When did y'all start? And how many people was in there?
Well, the group started in 1972. And we started out with, I think we had about 5 people there. Most of the members of the Poison, the Future Group, we had at least 3 of the members of the Future Group. It came out to be 9 people in the group as time went on.
And so primarily you guys were just jamming all the time. And to me, it sounded like you just had a funk groove every time you got together.
Yes, we did. We called ourselves a funk band, but later on we were known as a rock and roll funk band, the Killers, Poison.
That's right. Well, we had that little group called Ujima, and we was gonna do whopping and R&B the whole time. But boy, when you guys hit the stage, man, look out! It was on fire. I recall. Tell me about the members. Who were the members in the group? Let's say, let me give you a time period. Let's say 1973, 75, when we was burning up the Ebony Island and the Cozy Cat. Who were the members at that time?
Well, the members at that time, between that time period, was Peyton Johnson on trumpet, Gino Gilead on saxophone, Melvin Bad Watson on bass, Charles Morris on guitar, Reggie Smith on drums, the one and only Debo Dabney on keyboards, and the crazy man of all, the one and only Tony Joyner. Janet and Janet singing lead and me on lead.
Well, what was Janet's last name?
Janet Cook.
Janet Cook. Okay. Right. So how many of the people are still with us today?
We have.
I know my man Melvin has passed.
Melvin's passed.
And we want to honor all those who have passed on. So we always want to mention them specifically. And Melvin, after working with your group, he worked with my group with Silk. And I tell you, we became very close because we grew up in the same neighborhood over there in Church Hill. Later on, we began to work together, and he added a lot of flavor to my group when he came in.
Melvin was one of the best bass players around at that time and any time. Melvin could play his butt off, man.
Yes, he could.
And sing.
And sing. That's right, and sing too. Well, Melvin passed, and recently Debo Dabney had passed. And so two of those two members are no longer with us. But as far as I know, all the rest of the members are still alive and kicking.
So how much fun did you have on those days? I hope it was as much fun as I had.
I tell you what, I wouldn't trade those days for nothing. You know, we had a bunch of fun. We made a lot of money in no times. Sometimes we made quite a bit of money, but it wasn't all about the money. At that time, it was all about playing because we loved the music so much of what we were doing, and we loved performing so much. You know, I mean, of course, everybody wanted to make a little money, but performance was what we really liked. We loved performing.
Do you remember those Wednesday nights that we used to do together? And I would take everybody's PA and I'll hook it all up together and we would turn that place out.
I remember those nights. We had Starfire and you guys and Poison. And man, we used to just throw down. That's right. Every week was a crowd because people loved going out there and having a great time. You know, that's back in that time, people loved dancing, socializing, and just having great fun.
And the sad part about it is, Marshall, that most young people from this era, since the mid-'80s and since crack came into the community, don't know what it's like to have a gathering where you have thousands of black folk having fun and you don't have no drama like that.
Right.
I told somebody, I said, in all the years, 60s, 70s, 80s, I never saw anybody shot at a club. But as far as just somebody being randomly shot for no reason whatsoever, it never happened during our time.
That's right. People just had a great time, man. You know.
What caught our earlier generation off guard was the Black Power movement in the 60s. And then when Dr. King got killed, and then James Brown came with Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud.
I'm Black and I'm Proud.
And everybody we saw was my brother.
There you go.
What's up, my brother? What's up, my sister? Everybody we saw. You meet somebody you ain't never seen before in your life.
It was all about love and camaraderie.
My brother.
That's it, for sure.
We've had the musicians from that era. This is pre-disco DJ time. This is really right after the doo-wop quartet time, which is more like in the 60s.
Right.
Yeah.
Stacey Henry was really the only big band around, backing up everybody. But then when my group came around with this, all in one package, and then Poison, and then Trussell, and of course Starfire. When those groups came around, everything was contained within this whole group, the vocalists as well as the musicians. But now we've had several of those musicians to travel the world and be road managers and musicians and people involved in the music industry on an international level. And they all came, we can't even begin to name all the ones that just came from that core group of what we're talking about. Right there in Richmond, all in Philly International, all in CBS in New York, all to the West Coast. A lot of musicians came from that area that have contributed to the music industry in general,
Exactly.
Well, Marshall and I were talking the other day, and Charles Marshall's a few years your senior, but he don't look like it. But listen. All right.
That means I'm gonna have to do something about that Just for Men thing.
All right. Well, look. So here's the deal, Marshall.
Yeah.
And you can tell us the names of people who work with you in the beginning. Are you a Walker or Armstrong?
I'm a Walker man.
A Walker man. Okay. Who are the core people that you worked with, Marshall? And were you in the choir, the band?
Oh yeah, I was in the choir. Well, let me start by saying that I really got my start in music, as far as singing was concerned, was in elementary school.
Okay.
With Bobby Poindexter.
What school was that?
Baker Elementary School, man.
Okay.
Baker Elementary. So
All
Bobby
right.
Poindexter, I used to go to Bobby's house, and a couple other friends of ours he used to play piano at his house in Gilpin Court. And that's how I got started. And so when we were in the sixth grade, my sixth grade teacher, excuse me, Miss Epps, put me in music when I went to Benjamin Graves.
Okay.
Right.
And from Benjamin Graves, my music teacher was Miss Goodwin. She was great.
Okay.
And so there in her class, I started developing singing lead. And also another person who was in class with me was Major. Major Harris. I knew Major from back in Gilbert Court with Little Tommy and the Teenagers.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I got started singing at Graves and singing in the choir. So when I graduated from junior high school so at high school I went to Maggie Walker and I started singing in the choir with our director was Bobby Jones. That's how I really got started singing. Yeah. And those are the people that really helped me. Miss Goodwin, Bobby Jones, and Miss Epps, who started me off.
Recognizing the people that help with your foundation.
Oh, yeah.
Too many times the music teachers, especially the choir teachers, don't get the recognition that they deserve.
Exactly.
And so I'm glad you mentioned those people, you know.
They were the cornerstone as far as me developing into some type of singer. Because when I was at Maggie Walker during that time, that's when I was singing with the Bonnevilles.
Who were in the Bonnevilles?
The Bonnevilles were family.
Okay.
There were 3 brothers, 1 cousin, and myself. The Parker brothers, Roy Parker, Ricky Parker, Eugene Parker, Dewey Harris, and myself. Walter was the band like Stacy because he had a show. And like you and I talked once before, he had a show. He had the Bonnevilles.
Band and show.
The Bonnevilles. They had Sister Soul.
Right.
He had Net Valentine.
Right.
And occasionally he would have Dickie Wonder.
Told Charles, I said, you see, you got to understand something. 68 and 69 changed everything. The 2 bands I'm going to talk about would be 1968, Kool and the Gang, and Sly and the Family Stone, 1968. When I came to Virginia, the first week or so I was here, of course, I wanted to get out and see what was popping in Virginia, like was popping in Atlanta. So I went to the Mousetrap. In the back was Stacey Henry and the Majestics. All right, they had the 4 or 5 horns. They had Nat Lee on piano, Elwood Henderson on drums. I think Jonathan was playing bass. They had Nat Nolan and Bobby Thomas and Stacey Henry and the other sax player that everybody knows.
Bernard. You had also had Calder Massenberg and Bernard Robinson, which is called the Robinson brother on saxophone.
Right. So it's about 5 horns, right?
Yes.
Right.
No, but they actually had because they actually had 4 saxes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they really had about 9 horns.
Wow.
They had 4 saxes, 3 trumpets, and a couple of trombones.
Wow.
So,
well, that night I saw them, and I said to myself, "Oh my God, the music up here is real." Yeah. All right. I said, so the brothers up here doing it for real. Then I went around front, and there was this band called Brother Love. All right. Brother Love, they were a 7-piece group, a 6-piece group, 2 horns and a 4-piece rhythm section.
Right.
All right. And they were all self-contained.
Yes.
Right.
They were doing the stuff that I had transitioned from 68, 69 in Atlanta. Because when I saw Sly and the Family Stone in July of 69, right, a month before Woodstock, it changed the whole picture, Marshall.
There you go.
It changed the picture. Everybody became a self-contained group.
That's right.
All right? So it's no longer Janet and Marshall gonna come out and do some songs with the band. Janet and Marshall are part of the band. And they gonna come up here like Maurice White and Philip Bailey, and they gonna be on stage the whole time. And they're gonna play percussion instruments and cowbells and tambourine. Janet played the tambourine. You played the cowbell, and y'all were a member of the band. And that's what I saw Brother Love doing. And I said to myself, well, I can live here in Virginia, boy, because they got the old school in the back and the new school in the front. And the best thing about Brother Love was, man, them was some singing dudes, man.
Singing. I'm telling
you. Man, them was some Carlton. When you had the only person that I knew in the group that couldn't sing at all was Alvin.
He's the only one that didn't sing. That's true.
He's the only one that didn't
sing. But other than that, man, them was some singing dudes, boy. So you had that tight 4 and 5 piece harmony with lead vocals going. And some serious, man, Carlton and Clement. And I told Charles, man, I have never heard another band do Lou Rawls' You'll Never Find. When Charles sang lead on that. And I heard them do that thing. And man, and Charles started leading that thing. I just threw my hands up in there. I said, all these dudes are bad. All of them. The 3 groups we had percussion, we had synthesizers. Dwight Smith was a master of all the bands. He was a master of keyboard sounds and synthesis and playing that doggone clarinet without using his thumbs and that crazy way he used to play the doggone thing, man. They were awesome because they had, and then Charles. The other thing that I tell Charles that impressed me was that he and Alvin were more conservative than the other horn sections, but they were tighter. They didn't play a lot of outside the box stuff. They played exactly what needed to be played at the time, and they played it exactly the way it was supposed to be played.
At one time, Charles, I think I sang with you guys on a few occasions. Yeah, I did a few. I think I did a few gigs with you guys.
One of the beautiful parts about what we're doing tonight and what we did 35, 40 something years ago was we all got along.
We
all got along. When I look at you and I look at Charles and I think about our bands, there won't no beef between any of them bands.
No beef.
Oh no, not at all. That's why we work together so easily. Everybody cared about everybody and respected what they did.
And PJ is my boy to the day. Alvin is my boy. Trumpet players. We didn't feel like we were competing against each other. We weren't trying to outdo one another. What tied Poison and Trussell together was Tony Joyner.
Tony played with everybody.
That's right. He said he was playing with Stacy. Stacy gave him his first job. Nat Nolan got him the job. And they used to be practicing downstairs. He used to hear what y'all were doing upstairs. And he said Debo and Reggie reached out to him. And they befriended him, and he decided he wanted to play that stuff y'all were playing.
What is your memory of the 1970s? What comes to your mind?
I think one of the most important things for me was when Poison was on the road and traveling, just to gig in front of a live audience, big audiences. I mean, those were the times for me that were really great. I mean, it reinforced what I really wanted to do. AWB was one of the main people that we toured with when we went from DC all the way over to California.
A lot of people don't know who AWB is, so we're going to make sure they know it's the Average White Band.
Average White Band.
And they were hot.
They were very hot.
We were performing. They would come out on the side of the stage
and check you all out.
Check us out. But at one point, they kind of put us off the tour because I think I really personally believe
you made the stage too hot. That's what it was.
Exactly.
So Marshall, tell us about another thing that you did. I remember we talking about, which was something that most bands that around here never did, which was international.
We flew to Antigua. They had a musical extravaganza, whatever they call
Festival, right?
Festival, right? And Roulette had paid for us to go there to put on a show. It was great. We stayed for 7 days. There were maybe about 5 or 6 other different groups. We met the Spinners, we met a couple other groups, but that was really good.
That had to be a hard job for you to do, right? Let me mention somebody here at this time that I think deserves credit, and that is Joe Carter.
Exactly.
All of these bands that we're talking about, and aside from the Poison, the Trussell, the Ujima, and the Starfire, there were at least another dozen other bands
right.
that worked in that same area during that same time period. Another dozen bands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they may not have done all the big gigs that we did, but they played a lot of the same places.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And all of those bands went to work because of Joe Carter and Tom Seepers.
That's right.
They were the two guys that really tried to corral everything and make it possible for the bands to grow. Now,
right.
I'm sorry. I remember Joe Carter first coming around, Dynamic Entertainment Complex.
Yep.
Yeah, right. Complex.
And Joe Carter and I were very good friends. Bill and I.
We were dear little brothers.
Yeah. But, I mean, we stayed and worked with Joe Carter up until the day he died.
Right.
And yes, I mean, I know he ran across some difficult times, but Joe Carter made it possible. I remember the very first night, Joe said, I'm booking all the bands one night. And I said, Joe, how are you going to do that? He said, well, I'm renting the John Marshall Hotel, and I'm going to put a band on every floor.
Every floor.
But New Year's Eve, and none of the bands will be working anywhere else but right here in the John Marshall Hotel. And he hired every band. And I'm talking, Joe had at least 20 bands that night. 20 bands.
He cornered the market, and
he took over the whole thing that night.
And all the club owners in the city hated him.
They were mad as all get out. Joe booked all 20 bands. Now, he lost money on the event, but he made money off at least a good 4 or 5 of those bands in the events. But it was a loser because people could go from one floor to the next to see each different band. They paid one price.
Exactly.
They paid one price, and they went to see any band they wanted to see in the whole building.
Right.
You know, but Joe took that and started that complex, that entertainment complex, and then moved on to the Cozy Cat, and he kept us working. I remember doing those Wednesday nights with you. I remember every Friday and Saturday. Joe would have an event. Even if we were booked, Joe would book us again. He would say, look, I need y'all to be here every Friday. And I said, Joe, that's going to cost you for us to come every Friday. I can't cancel all those gigs. He said, no, I will hire somebody else to play till y'all get here. I said, okay, I'll go along with that. So, next thing I know, we're doing double gigs on Fridays and Saturdays.
Right.
Running up and down the highway, playing gigs for Joe Carter. And that would not have happened without him. It would not have happened.
You're right. You know,
now, I know a lot of people say, well, we didn't make a lot of money. Look, you was working. We were enjoying ourselves. A lot of times we didn't have a crowd. But I know a lot of times we packed Ebony Owler and Cozy Cat to the max. Many nights. And it would not have happened without Joe Carter.
That's right. And like I was telling Bill, you know, a lot of the guys didn't care for Joe, and they talked about how bad he was. But what they did not think about, especially like with Poison, there's a lot of things that Joe did for Poison. Like we played at the Apollo Theater. We never would have went to the Apollo. We never would have had that tour on with AWB. We never would have been on Soul Train. We never would have went to Canada, played in Canada. We never would have went overseas. Hey,
it would not happen. It would not have happened
if it wasn't for Joe. You know. So
I will say this other thing, Marshall, and the sad is we're gonna have to cut this a little short because Charles and I both have to make some other moves, and we just appreciative having you. But let me say this to you, Joe Carter believed in you guys.
Yes.
And that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. Sometimes other people tend to believe in us more than we believe in ourselves.
Right.
And that's what I told you, and I tell the joke. I told Charles, I've already put it on camera here, that Joe, at Joe's funeral, I had to go up there and tell everybody, I love Joe Carter, but he lied. He lied because he said Poison was better than Earth, Wind, and Fire, Starfire was better than the Commodores, and the Waller family was better than the Jacksons. And I said, Joe lied. But at the same time, he believed in you all so much, and he elevated your status by telling that lie.
Right.
So even if you weren't as good as Earth, Wind, and Fire, you were in the same category with Earth, Wind, and Fire, according to Joe, which elevated you way past what you would have been if somebody said you was a local band from Richmond.
Right. Exactly. You're right.
So I give him credit for that.
I give him credit for a lot of things because, I mean, like I said, he tried hard to encourage me to let him become the manager of the group, and I never did. And I said, I can't let you be the manager and still be your friend. So we can be friends forever.
Right.
Okay, as long as you're not my manager. Okay? And we can talk about the business. But I can't let you manage the band, but I will definitely be your friend forever. And Joe, I mean, I worked with him on projects after the band things were over on his Black History program. I worked strongly with him on that. But I can tell you, I just got a lot of respect for the guy. When I told him that, I said, one day I'm going to sit around, I'm going to have to get all these people together one day, and we have to talk about the old days and stuff, and maybe we have an event. He said, yeah, but you know, I don't know. I don't know if you ought to do that. You know, I don't know if you ought to do that because, you know, you might rub some folks the wrong way. I said, Joe, no, it doesn't matter. What needs to be recognized is what you've done for everybody.
Yes.
Now, I mean, I remember him dragging me down to the wall of the family house when they were like, they could barely walk and chew gum at the time. You know what I'm saying? He said, but each one of them, I can teach each one of them. I can teach all of them to work together. Because they all got a good voice, and every one of them can become a lead singer. And I said, Joe, I said they're 12 and 13 years old. You know what I'm saying? You know, Oogie couldn't have been more than 15 at the time. And he was the oldest brother. And I'm going, these are children, Joe. He said, Charles, stick with me, work with me. Help me make this happen. Help me make this. And he was a believer. He was a believer. And he recognized each of these different groups and the differences in each of the different groups. Right. He saw that. He knew you were a funk band. He knew we were an R&B group. He knew Trussell was a band doing rock. He knew these differences in the groups. You know what I'm saying? Because he also thought he was a songwriter and thought he could write all the hits. He just knew he could write all the hits for Starfire. You know, but nonetheless, the guy. None of this would have happened without Joe Carter.
But again, Marshall, thank you very much for spending time with us. Look, we might even ask you to step back in when I get PJ and Gino on.
Yes.
And because I tried secretly to get them on tonight while we were doing it. When I had my head down, I was actually texting both of them, asking them to join us on a surprise.
I talked to Tony last week. Tony,
you did?
I've spoken to Tony at least a half a dozen times in the past month, and each time he's getting ready to come, and for some reason never make it.
So Charles, let's say this: we're going to work to get Tony, PJ, and Gino on, and we're going to let Marshall drop in and surprise everybody.
That'd be great.
Sounds great.
Marshall, thank you very much, man, for coming on Let's Talk Music Richmond. You're a part of the music history here in Richmond, man, and that Walker Armstrong, you and Charles are Walker Armstrong right there on the screen. We don't even need to have a Walker, and I'm Peabody down in Petersburg.
And we all get along. We
used to tell y'all this all the time when y'all used to come to Petersburg to play Peabody. Y'all might win the game, but you got to get back to Richmond.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Marshall, it's a pleasure seeing you, Marshall. I'm glad you're doing well. I'm going to give you some of that Just a Man thing, too.
Next time I want to see it all black.
All right, I'm going to have to do something about that. Love you guys. And
take care. God bless.
It's been a great program. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll catch you another time.
All right.
Let's Talk Music, Richmond, VA. Bye-bye.
Good night.